13,490. That's how many Ford Rangers and Everests got recalled this year over an engine part that can fail on you mid-drive, with no warning at all. No dash light, no rattle first, just gone. Stick with me to the end, because the worst item on this list isn't the theft numbers, and it isn't the court case either. It's still to come. I'm Mark Petrelli. Before this channel, I spent years as an auction house valuer, and 15 years on the auction floor taught me one thing. The truth about a car always shows up eventually, usually at the worst possible time for whoever's trying to sell it. So when I say I'm not here for badge loyalty or brand hate, that's not a slogan. It's literally how I've had to look at every vehicle that rolled across the block. Today it's the Ranger's turn. Here's the thing that makes this genuinely worth your time. The Ford Ranger isn't some niche vehicle you can shrug off. It's Australia's best-selling ute, #1 nationally for the third year running, and it's been the single best-selling vehicle of any kind in this country for 3 years straight, 2023 through 2025. Utes now make up roughly 1 in every 5 new vehicles sold here. So when something goes wrong at the manufacturer level, it doesn't touch a handful of enthusiasts. It touches tradies, families, fleets, and eventually, the used market every one of those buyers will sell into. And in the space of about 18 months, the Ranger has stacked up an engine stall recall, a braking software fault, and a fuel vapor leak recall, on top of a company with a documented history of getting complaint handling wrong. That's not a coincidence you can wave away. Number 10. For the first time in a long while, the Ranger isn't untouchable at the very top. The Tesla Model Y outsold it for 2 months running, in May and June this year, with June alone seeing over 8,000 Model Y units find a buyer, comfortably ahead of Ford's result. On its own, that's not a scandal. It's a market signal. The unbeatable ute is genuinely contestable now, and that matters for anyone thinking about resale value 5 years from now. Up next, number 9. The sales race hasn't actually cooled, whatever that Tesla headline suggests. Ford has already moved more than 20,000 Rangers in the opening months of 2026 alone, more than any rival ute on the market. Which means every defect on this list keeps scaling in real time, against a bigger and bigger pool of owners. More units sold is more units exposed. Number 8 is where it stops being about sales charts and starts being about your driveway. In Queensland alone, Ford Ranger thefts from the previous generation PX model totaled more than $5.28 million in estimated value in a single financial year. Rangers get targeted partly because resale is strong, and partly because there's real demand for the parts on the black market. Would you sign up for that kind of target on your back fence? I wouldn't. Number 7. As part of that $10 million settlement I'll get to properly in a moment, Ford was required to set up an independent complaints review program, specifically for customers who'd asked for a refund or a replacement and didn't get one through the normal channels. Let me put that in plain language. A regulator looked at Ford's own complaints process and decided it needed outside supervision. That's not a hypothetical failure. That's documented, on the public record. Number 6 is the case study most people have half heard about, but never seen the numbers on. The federal court found Ford Motor Company of Australia engaged in unconscionable conduct in how it handled complaints about vehicles fitted with power shift transmissions. More than 70,000 Focus, Fiesta, and EcoSport vehicles sold between 2011 and 2018. 37% of those vehicles needed at least one clutch replacement. The court described the conduct in scathing terms and landed on a $10 million penalty, one of the largest under Australian consumer law at the time. Now, to be fair, that's not the Ranger. Different vehicles, different transmission. But it's the same company, the same complaints process, and it's the strongest evidence we have of how this manufacturer behaves when things go wrong at scale. Number 5, and this is where the Ranger specifically starts pulling its own weight. 3 separate Ranger-related safety recalls inside roughly 12 months. Not one bad batch, a pattern. Reviewers have flagged recalls turning up across nearly every model Ford has sold here since 2022. One recall is bad luck. 3 in a year on the country's best-selling vehicle starts to look like a maths problem the brand hasn't solved. Quick pause before we get into the ones that actually matter for your safety. If you're finding this useful, drop a subscribe. It genuinely helps a small channel like this get in front of the next Ranger buyer before they sign anything. Right, back to it. Number 4. A poorly fitted bracket on the fuel vapor line, found on 2024 Rangers running the 2.7-litre EcoBoost V6, creating a genuine leak and fire risk. No mucking around with that one. Fuel and fire don't need a long explanation. Number 3. And here's a case where the ranking needs a quick word of explanation, because on paper, it looks backwards. This recall covers 1,643 Rangers built between 2024 and 2025 over a software bug that can reduce brake assist, meaning you'd need to press harder in an emergency stop. Fewer units than some of the others, and it's ranked here rather than higher because it's a reduction in stopping power, not a total loss of control. Still serious, just not the worst kind of serious. That distinction matters, and we're about to see why. Number 2. This one isn't a separate fault. It's the reason the next entry sits where it does. Ford's own recall notice states, in its own words, that a sudden loss of motive power while driving increases the risk of an accident. And that accident, in Ford's own language, may result in serious injury or death. Read that again. That's not me being dramatic for the camera. That's the manufacturer's own risk statement. Which brings us to number 1, the camshaft sprocket recall. Remember that $10 million federal court finding from a few minutes ago? Same company. This time it's not about how Ford handled a complaint after the fact, it's about the fault itself. 13,490 Rangers and Everests, built between 2022 and 2025, all fitted with the 3-litre V6 turbo diesel engine Ford calls the Lion. The left-hand camshaft sprocket can fracture. When it does, the engine can simply stall, without warning, at any speed, on any road. Automotive analyst Paul Marrick was among those to flag just how serious this one is when the recall dropped. And in plain Australian terms, a car that can lose power on the highway without telling you first isn't a minor service bulletin. It's the difference between a warning light and a phone call nobody wants to make. So where does that leave you if you're the one actually looking at a Ranger on a dealer lot this month? Not walking away outright. This is still the country's best-selling vehicle for a reason, and Ford has issued the fixes for every fault on this list. But go in with your eyes open. Ask for the recall and service history in writing before you sign anything, not after. A car that looks like a bargain today can turn into a 5-figure mistake down the track if the paperwork doesn't match the promises. And I've watched that exact scene play out on the auction floor more times than I can count. If this saved you from a conversation you didn't know you needed to have, that's genuinely the whole point of this channel. See you in the next one.